Can you use your 529 plan to pay for meals for your college student, or is that not eligible? We know room and board is, but what about other meals? I'll explain coming up. My name is Mike Bernard. I'm the host of the Wise Money Show. I'm also one of the certified financial planners right here at Korhorn Financial Group. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and smash that thumbs up button. All right, I've explained this concept a couple times in the past week or so, and if you're watching and I explained it to you, you know who you are. But I thought, well, yeah, this is sort of weird and geeky and it's obscure and it's confusing. Let's just do a video about it. How does it work with using a 529 plan for college expenses? How does it work for meals? Is it eligible? Can you use a 529 plan to pay for meals for your college student? Or does it need to be room and board? Does it need to be dorm room food or cafeteria food? How's that all work? Well, to understand it, you've got to understand something called the cost of attendance. Every single school, every university posts on their website every single year the average or typical cost of attendance. And they're going to break it down and they're going to show you, okay, for a full-time student, this is what the tuition should be. Okay, this is what your books and your fees should be approximately. This is what your room and board should be. Now, some schools break it out into those three categories. Some stretch it out to 4. Some stretch it out to just 2, okay, where it's tuition and fees and then room and board, and that's it, okay? But every university is going to publish that cost of attendance. All right, so if you've got a high schooler right now, or you're just curious, I'm going to show you some schools here in a minute. It's interesting to look at since I'm not paying any of these bills right now. But it'd be worth it for you if you've got a couple schools that you're thinking of. Just go online and look at their cost of attendance and see how it compares. So why does this cost of attendance matter? Well, when you're looking at paying for college and using some of your college savings plans, 529 plans, towards that, you're allowed to use your 529 plan to pay for all eligible expenses for attending that university, okay? So if you've got X amount in tuition and X amount in room and board, that's what you're allowed to use your 529 plan towards. However, there's sort of this not to exceed limit. And that is that cost of attendance. So you wouldn't be able to say, well, tuition is this, but I'm going to set my student up in some luxury apartment, or I'm going to buy $1 million house for my child, and I'm going to use that as their housing because we've got a lot of money in a 529 plan somehow, that it was inherited or whatever, and we're going to pull that money out and use it to buy this, very large house because my student needs housing. No, there's this not to exceed, right? So that not to exceed is published by each university in their cost of attendance. So listen, tuition shouldn't be more than this. If you're full-time, tuition should be this. Now, if your student is only taking, 12 credit hours instead of 15, do you get to withdraw this full amount in that cost of attendance? No, you only get to withdraw as an eligible expense from your 529 exactly what the tuition and fee cost was, okay? But it's not to exceed that number. But then room and board, that's where it gets a little more interesting. Within this cost of attendance, that room and board is pretty much spot on from what I've seen if you have a child living on campus and has a meal plan. All right, it's pretty stinking spot on. And so therefore, cost of attendance and your actual cost should pretty much match. It's when your child moves off campus or they drop their meal plan, that's when it gets more interesting. So let's just address it. Is off-campus housing or meals that are not cafeteria plan, are those eligible expenses for your 529 plan? The short answer is yes. Yes, they are. As long as they don't exceed that cost of attendance figure that your university posts. So for example, if for your university, the cost of attendance says room and board it should be $10,300, and you're paying rent for your student at $500 a month, so that's $6,000. Well, then there could be up to $4,300 that you could use as a reimbursable or eligible expense for food, okay? If you, for some reason, quantified, and you know you're only spending $3,000 on food for your child, well, then your limit that you get to draw out of your 529 plan as an eligible expense is that $3,000, is that actual number. But within the cost of attendance, if it says, well, up to $4,300 could be used for food, then you could use technically up to that $4,300 if you believe you had that much in eligible expenses. Does that make sense? So for the direct cost, tuition and living in a dorm and on-campus cafeteria food, that sort of stuff, a meal plan, all of that should be very straightforward. But this cost of attendance really applies when your child moves off campus or drops that meal plan. They still need to eat, and those expenses are still eligible for use for your 529 plan, and you can withdraw those dollars tax-free, the growth from your 529 plan tax-free for these eligible expenses. But they've got to fit those eligible expenses. You can only cover up to the amount that you actually spent with a not to exceed of that cost of attendance. Does that make sense? So let's look at some of these cost of attendance numbers, okay? So where our primary office is located, our headquarters, about 3 miles from University of Notre Dame, and they're sort of known as one of the more expensive or sort of the elite universities in the nation. So if you take a look at their average cost of attendance for 2021-22, tuition and fees, they've lumped together $58,843. Room and meals, so room and board, $16,304. Books and supplies, $1,250. Personal expenses, $1,200. Transportation, there's an asterisk by that, so that doesn't apply to everyone. $750. So total cost of attendance for a Notre Dame student, $78,347. Now, when you're looking at that, if you've got scholarships or grants or awards or whatever, that's going to go count against that, right? That's going to reduce that number when you're looking at your cost of attendance, and then you've got to fit your, how much did you pay for tuition, how much did you pay for rent, how much did you pay for meals, all within that, all right? So that's how it is for Notre Dame. What about my alma mater, Michigan State University? Take a look at that. That's going to be a little bit cheaper. They lump it into just 2 categories. A lot of state schools do that. Tuition and fees, $14,914, and then room and board, $10,676. Now for me, my room and board was significantly less. Why? Lived in a small house in Collingwood with about 6 other people. I think their rent, now this was ages ago, I think their rent, we each paid like $150. This is just the ugliest house you can imagine. And we probably left it in worse condition than we found it. But we didn't spend that much, I'll tell you that. But at least for cost of attendance, that's what it's stating. What about UCLA? That's another big one. So in residence, so they actually break it down. Okay, this is helpful. Tuition and fees for residence halls and off-campus, yep, that's all the same. Room and board, though, for residence halls, they've got or let's say room and meals, that's how they're calling it, $16,763. For off-campus apartments, they're actually saying room and meals should be a little bit cheaper. Your cost of attendance should be capped at a lower number, $15,951. They've got a smattering there for books, about $1,400. Some transportation there, personal, some health insurance. We're seeing that more and more. These universities offering some health insurance. And so all of that's baked into their cost of attendance there as well. And then the last one that I looked at just for kicks was Harvard. Obviously, they're an elite school as well. Tuition, $51,143. Fees of $4,400. Room, so your rent, $11,705, which, yeah, that probably makes sense, whether you're on campus or off campus. Over in Massachusetts, probably higher cost of living, finding rent. That's a very dense area. And board, $7,236, and then additional personal expenses there. So take a look at these costs of attendance, and then work with your CFP to make sure you've got the right strategy for whether you should be reimbursing yourself for these eligible rent and food expenses when your child is living off campus or not. I think part of it would depend on, have you fully funded that 529? Is that the plan, that you have fully funded that 529, and therefore, every eligible expense you're going to want to make sure you use that 529 for, so you're getting that tax-free withdrawal? Or, like many people, because the cost of college has been so outrageous and so uncertain, is your plan to fund college part your child working, part 529 money that you saved up maybe to get some state tax credits, and part out-of-pocket cost for you? If that's the case, you might not be as focused on drawing every little reimbursement out of the 529 plan, because you've looked and said, well, the 529 plans only even cover a small portion of the total college expense. We don't need to reimburse ourselves for every point. Work with your CFP on that. And if you don't have a college-age student right now, if you've got young kids, or maybe hoping to have kids someday, or maybe for grandkids and you're not sure that your kids are thinking about this yet, have them talk to a CFP. Understand how this works, because that will influence how much you should fund, how much you want to fund. College planning, one of the biggest financial planning goals, and understanding how 529 plan works and how you can reimburse yourself or cover some of the costs for these eligible expenses, critically important. Work with your CFP on that. If you don't have a CFP on your team, you can contact one on my team. Find us online, Korhorn.com. That's Korhorn with K, wisemoneyshow.com. You can find us there as well, or give us a call, 574-247-5898. All right, there you have it. Go out and take your next wise step in your financial life.